The iconic field barns of Upper Swaledale have been the centre of our Every Barn Tells a Story project, where we've been capturing the local community's stories and memories of these traditional farm buildings.
We call it one of our special qualities. It is probably the single greatest density of field barns and traditional farm buildings to be found anywhere in Western Europe. The landscape was formed by a specialist farming regime that intensified in the 1700s and 1800s, was based around dairying.
This is Great Rampsholm cow house, and it has some very typical characteristics of one of these cow houses. One of the first things that visitors want to know when they see these wonderful stone cow houses is, what were these for? We spoke to the local community and they told us that these are actually called troughs or through stones, and they are large flat stones that run through from the outer skin of the wall to the inner skin of the wall of the cow house, joining them together and giving them stability. We're in the mew, which is where the hay from the meadows outside the cow house was actually stored right up to the ceiling, and this hay was what was going to feed the cows that were tethered in the stalls over here. We've also got what's called the skelbues, which is this magnificent piece of woodwork that you can see here. And again, this is a wonderful Old Norse word, skelia, which actually means to divide, from the boozes, which are the stalls where the cows were actually tethered over the winter time. The farmer came through the fodder gang, carrying hay from the mew to feed the cows that would have been tied in these stalls known as boozes, divided by wooden dividers called boskins. And in the middle, you'll see there's this stake here, and this would have stopped the two cows which were tied side by side from bumping into each other. They were tied using chains, which you can see here, the original chains, and these chains were attached to rudsters or rud stakes. Above the cow stalls, we've actually got the wooden balks, or balks as it's pronounced in Swaledale. And up here, if some of the hay that had been cut in the fields wasn't quite dry enough, it could be placed and the air would circulate and the warmth from the cows would dry it out. And also there might be some bedding up there as well. So the cows have been let out for water. The farmer brings the hay through, places it down for them to eat, and also then has to muck out all the cow muck from the group, which is this channel that you've got down here. And that would go out into the hay meadow, eventually to be spread to feed the next year's hay crop.
Historic buildings specialist Sue Rathmell joins us at Willie Green's cow house near Angram. There is documentary evidence of a cow house here from the late 17th century, and we're using Sue's experience and insight to help us identify surviving clues.
Is this building late 17th century?
Not the building that we see today. The particular dating evidence for it is in the door surrounds, the masonry, the character and proportions of the building. And the Historic Environment Record puts it around about 1760.
But is there any evidence for an earlier structure here, Sue?
Well, we can see some very substantial stone foundation blocks, particularly this section here, that the base of the wall is made of very large stones, and then the wall structure is set back slightly.
We head inside the cow house to look for other early features.
What we're seeing in here is some modern work that's gone on. We've actually got concrete boskins, we've got a concrete floor, we've got a concrete lined wall all the way around, and then above you can actually see that the farmer has lime washed the wall so it's white. And this tells us these are all improvements that were brought in about what period of time?
Yeah, well, the Acts of Parliament in the 1930s to improve milking parlours, but in this area it's after the war, so 1950s, 1960s.
Through the fodder gang, we enter the hay mew.
We came into here with hopes that we might find evidence for the earlier building that we think is on this site, didn't we? And the first thing, of course, we did was to look at the timber of the roof above our heads.
There's a very neat roof structure of 3 roof trusses, all relatively modern, late 19th or early 20th century, I think.
So not that old a roof, not the evidence that we were hoping for.
Not what we were looking for, no.
So we were a little bit disappointed, but just as we were leaving, we looked up at the forking hole behind us here and see what did we spot?
Yes, well, the very interesting feature is the series of carpenter's marks.
Essentially, when they built timber structures in the 16th century, they were created off-site, like a 3D jigsaw puzzle, and all the joints were marked up with these carpenter's marks. It was disassembled, brought onto site, and then reassembled, and these carpenter's marks allowed them to put back the right joints together and create the structure.
Yes, we can see that it's been it's a very much cut down timber of 16th, 17th century date.
This is Jordan Close cow house, and from the outside, again, it looks like an 18th century cow house, but we've got documentary evidence that there were cow houses here earlier. So we're very interested to see what evidence there is for earlier structures. First thing.
Entering Jordan Close cowhouse, we spot carpenter's marks in the reused wooden beam above the doorway, and Sue explains the features of the much older roof.
The form of the timbers is from crook blades that were the structure of the building from the apex of the roof right to the ground. The weight of the roof was carried all the way to ground on substantial timbers. This crook form is medieval in origin, certainly continues, it looks like, through to the 16th century.
What we're looking at are quite curved, rounded timbers that have actually been cut down from whole trees. And what we've also got, we did spot, there are also carpenter's marks up there as well, aren't there? So what we don't know is, was there a very old cow house here, and that's part of the original structure, or were these timbers saved from somewhere else, perhaps a house? So it's a story that we can't completely finish, but it's a really, really very interesting story.
Most of the field barns are effectively redundant for modern agricultural purposes. Now, we will lose some of these barns in the future, but we have to identify those which are important to us and try our hardest to retain them. Now, we are running a project where we conserve a small number of barns using traditional building skills and local craftsmen to deliver a really good, high-quality job and to ensure that those buildings can stay in the landscape.